Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding the hearing today, and I want to thank our panelists for the opportunity to examine the current state of collegiate athletics. And like you, look forward to hearing from our witnesses, including the President of the National Collegiate Athletic Association, on how the NCAA and its member institutions are fulfilling the commitments made to our collegiate student athletes. I'm an avid sports fan. I know other members of this committee are as well. As a former basketball player, high school and college, and the proud father of a daughter who competed at the Division I level, I certainly recognize that participation in organized sports not only requires physical and mental strength, but also teaches teamwork and other skills that serve you throughout life. However, the college student athlete is and should be a student first. Colleges and universities must remember and prioritize their academic obligation to student athletes. As the popularity of college sports has grown, particularly the popularity of college football and men's and women's basketball, so too has the profitability of many collegiate athletic programs. In the current environment, the stakes have been raised both for the student athlete who wants to succeed and for the university that has a financial interest in winning games. Increasing revenues for some schools and conferences, due in large part to lucrative contracts for the broadcast rights to football and basketball games, have become more common. Revenues from ticket sales and merchandising efforts for some schools are also significant. And of course, alumni want to see their teams win and may be inspired to contribute to winning programs. As we'll hear today, the NCAA is a member-driven organization whose stated mission is, and I quote, to integrate intercollegiate athletics into higher education so that the educational experience of the student athlete is paramount, end quote. However, major criticism of college sports is that some institutions appear unable to balance the core academic mission of the university and the commercial considerations that often accompany college athletics, particularly in high-profile sports. Many feel the commitment to the student athlete is falling short. Another point of contention involves athletic scholarships and whether the practice of offering annual as opposed to multi-year scholarships unfairly places student athletes at risk of losing their scholarships as a result of poor performance or injury. But while multi-year scholarships may benefit student athletes, they may disadvantage smaller schools who can't match the resources of larger institutions. Clearly, collegiate athletics in America is not without controversy, and we will hear from some of the NCAA's most vocal critics today. While I'm sure that today's hearing will highlight a host of important issues, I hope we will not lose sight of the positive impact that amateur athletics has made on the lives of countless student athletes. And we must remember that college athletics is not just about football and basketball. The Director of Athletics at the University of South Dakota recently shared the results of the student-athlete exit interviews he conducts annually to evaluate the school's athletic program from the vantage point of the athletes themselves. He underscored two stories that stood out from this past year's athletes. The athletic director at USD reiterated how Dustin Gens, a sophomore diver at USD, recovered from open-heart heart surgery to qualify to dive at the NCAA Zone Championships, a feat that would not have been possible without the work of a dedicated training staff, academic support, coaches, team, and family. He also noted the moving story of Hannah Veselik, a sophomore swimmer, who leaned on friends, family, and teammates to help her through the tragic loss of her father, who passed away early in the season. With this support, Hannah was able to return to the pool and achieve lifetime best times in all of her swimming events at the Summit League Championships. As the USD athletic director puts it, and I quote, "These two are just a sample of what college athletics should mean. If you strip away the money, fancy locker rooms, charter flights, and large budgets, you're left with student athletes who often have to overcome personal, social, economic, academic, and athletic adversity, all just to compete. But they frequently do it with passion and a determination that makes us all proud," end quote. That's from the athletic director at the University of South Dakota. Recognizing the challenges exist, it's my hope that the NCAA, its member institutions, the student athletes themselves, and other stakeholders will seek solutions that promote the education, health, and well-being of student athletes and seek to preserve amateurism in collegiate athletics. This is an area where Congress can provide a forum, but the solutions are most likely to come from those most directly involved in the education and development of student athletes. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for holding this hearing, and I look forward to hearing and having an opportunity to question our witnesses. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Emmert, under your presidency, indicated that you've taken the initiative to form some of these Division I subcommittees to address needed changes, and I'm wondering if you could discuss what you hope to accomplish with that initiative.
Thank you, Senator. First of all, as I mentioned, within a month we'll see, I hope, the board pass a completely new decision-making structure because of the challenges of the past 24 months of making decisions around a very aggressive reform agenda. The leadership of the 65 leading universities have said we simply have to find a better way to make progress. They have identified as their agenda many of the items that I just addressed and a handful of others. So there is a very keen interest in finding, first of all, ways to provide greater support for student athletes. We'd passed twice over the past 36 months a proposal to allow universities to give student athletes, as a bare minimum, an additional $2,000 in their scholarship to cover all their miscellaneous expenses. I believe that the universities this fall and no later than January will approve a proposal to do something just like that yet again, and I hope an even more robust model to cover the real legitimate costs of being a student athlete. We were able to pass changes that allowed but didn't require multi-year scholarships for student athletes. Prior to 3 years ago, the universities were literally forbidden by NCAA rules about providing multi-year scholarships. We were able to get a change in the rules to allow them, and I think we're well on our way toward mandating that they be, in fact, multiple-year commitments so that student athletes don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to be able to finish their degree on time. I think that is extremely likely to happen. As I mentioned also, there's a very strong interest in this same group of leading universities to cover the costs, fully the costs of insurance programs. The vast majority of universities cover all of those costs today, but it shouldn't be at question. It should be quite clear that no student athlete will ever have to cover costs of insurance or injuries that they are inflicted on them when they're a student athlete. And I think finally we've got to address this issue of time. The demands that are placed on student athletes right now are, in my eyes, and I think in the eyes of many, including, I suspect, Mr. Bradshaw, the demands that are being placed on young men, both and women, both in terms of what's required of them for regular coaching, what's required from informal coaching, what's required simply to be competitive these days is far too great a time demand, and we need to find ways. I completely agree with Mr. Ramsey, for example. We need to find ways that young men and women can take advantage of internships, of study abroad opportunities, of all the things that we know that help prepare them for life, because a very, very tiny fraction of them are ever going to play professional sport. For virtually all college players, their last game is their last game in college. That's not going to be their profession. Their professional life and their life in general is going to be changed by having a meaningful degree and meaningful experiences that go along with that. That means we've got to create opportunities for them to do the many things that are available on campuses.
Thanks. Mr. Bradshaw, you bring a unique perspective as a former AD and as a member institution taking care of the well-being of your student athletes. And I'm told that it was your practice while at Temple to conduct exit interviews, and I'm wondering, and that sometimes those led to substantive changes in policy and how programs could be improved. You got some examples from those interviews that you can share with us that led to direct improvements in the way that Temple addressed the needs of student athletes?
We gathered our best information from our student athletes about how they were being treated. As many of you might know, student athletes aren't the most shy people in the world. They're like my teenagers. They let you know when they're hungry. They let you know when they need things. So the exit interviews were invaluable because the seniors were leaving the institution. We'd also follow up. We had questionnaires that we sent the seniors a month before they left, and then we went over those questionnaires with the student athletes to talk about every facet of their experience at the university. That was helpful. We also had a captain's council, which was an aggregate of all the captains from every team that got together without the coaches, just myself and some administrators, to hear everything they had to say about their experience so that we could use that in recruiting and help to do a lot better job. We also have team meetings with each of the teams before their seasons to welcome the freshmen and also to gather input from those freshmen about it. And we were able to gather very valuable things, like we had one team who their practice facility was maybe about 25 minutes from campus, and when they got back in the evening, they weren't able to get the kind of quality dinner because a lot of the students had already been in there and things were picked over, and we were able to extend that time for their meals for an hour so that those student athletes could eat. We also had football players who were practicing in the afternoon, some of them in pre-med, and some of the courses they were taking were right up against their practice. We were able to get that football coach to take those practices in the morning when 97% of the classes that the kids were taking were there. So those were very valuable, that was very valuable input right from the center of our universe, the student athletes.
And my time's expired, Mr. Chairman, but I'm just, from the athletic director standpoint, what role do you see the ADs and the universities playing? I mean, in terms of some of these things you can go above and beyond what the NCAA requires, correct? I mean, there's a lot of flexibility that's allowed the member institutions to make decisions that are in the best interest of their student athletes.
And we should. We have the responsibility, and it's institutional control. It's not only the chairman of the Board of Trustees, but the president and athletic director should all be on board and have similar philosophies and missions and principles about how that works. And in concert with all those people, because sometimes you need funds to do the things that you need to do, and you need the support from the board and the president. So it's very important that all of us work together to do that, because we're out recruiting other student athletes, and that's a brand. We call athletics the front porch of the university. It might not be the most important thing you see when you drive by, but it's the most visible messenger of the brand of the university.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.